Welcome, everyone. We're kicking off a brand new study series today called Hidden Treasure, Lessons from the Parables.
It's great to be starting this. And for part one, we thought, let's tackle the big question right away.
Exactly. Why? Why did Jesus teach using parables? It seems so central to his ministry, but maybe not always straightforward.
Absolutely. And that's our mission for this first study, to really dig into the text where Jesus himself explains his reasons. We want to understand why he chose this method and how it shaped everything he did.
Okay, so let's start with a quick definition. We often hear an earthly story with a heavenly meaning, which is helpful.
It is. It's a good starting point. But the original language gives us more texture, doesn't it?
It does. The Greek, parabole, literally means something like juxtaposition. You're placing two things side by side for comparison.
Right, setting the familiar next to the unfamiliar, the earthly next to the heavenly, and the Hebrew background, the Mashal, that's even broader.
Yeah, that could be a comparison, a proverb, sometimes even a riddle or allegory. It was a known way of teaching.
A very known way. So Jesus isn't inventing storytelling out of thin air, but he elevates it. He turns it into this incredible tool.
Like a spiritual gem embedded in earthy language, as someone put it. Using things people knew intimately, farming, fishing, baking bread.
As links in a chain,
Yeah.
Connecting their everyday lives directly to God, earth to heaven. It's quite brilliant, really.
It makes you wonder, though, if storytelling, the mashal, was already common in Jewish tradition, what made Jesus's parables so distinct, so powerful?
That's a key question. And yes, it absolutely was common. Think back to the Old Testament.
Nathan confronting King David.
Exactly. He doesn't hit him with a direct accusation, not at first. He tells him that story about the rich man and the poor man's lamb.
Yeah.
It hooks David before he even realizes he's judging himself.
And the rabbis use stories all the time in their teaching too, right? We see that in the Talmud and Midrash.
Constantly. So
Yeah.
Jesus is operating within a familiar tradition. His audience would have recognized the style.
But he wasn't just using the form, he was like perfecting it. You said he blended the familiar and the divine.
That's the unique quality, I think. He took these mundane, everyday experiences, a woman losing a coin, a shepherd looking for one sheep, and infused them with profound truths about the kingdom of God.
So it wasn't just abstract theology, it was concrete. You could picture it.
Precisely. Most of us think better in pictures than in abstract concepts, don't we? Parables grab your attention, they sort of disarm you with a story.
And then deliver that spiritual punch, sometimes when you least expect it.
Exactly. And his illustrations were pulled straight from their world first-century Palestine. Sowing seed, mending nets, vineyards. Everyone from the scholar to the peasant could grasp the surface level.
Which makes the next point interesting. There seems to be a shift in his ministry. Early on, like the Sermon on the Mount, he speaks pretty plainly, quite directly.
He does, yes. Very direct teaching.
But later, especially as opposition from the religious leaders ramped up, he seems to lean much more heavily, almost exclusively sometimes, on parables. Why the change?
That shift is crucial. And the text suggests it was a very deliberate, almost tactical move. There are a couple of big reasons.
Okay, what's the first?
Protection, or maybe strategic veiling. As you said, opposition was growing. The priests, scribes, elders, they were watching him, listening for anything they could twist into an accusation before the Sanhedrin.
Looking for grounds to arrest him, essentially.
Absolutely. So, teaching in parables allowed him to proclaim truths about the kingdom, sometimes really challenging truths, aimed right at those leaders, but in a way that wasn't easily prosecutable.
So if he said directly, your interpretation of the law is wrong, or God's kingdom welcomes outsiders you despise, that's dangerous.
Extremely dangerous. But if he tells a story about, say, a vineyard owner whose tenants reject his servants and kill his son, well, the leaders might understand the implication.
They often did, didn't they? The texts say they knew he was talking about them.
Yes, they got the message. But it was harder to pin down a specific charge of blasphemy or sedition based on a story. It gave him space to continue his work. This was, frankly, a wise strategy.
Okay, that makes sense. Protection through veiling the message. What's the second reason for the shift?
Accessibility, but maybe in a different way than we first think. By teaching outdoors, often to huge crowds, maybe from a boat to people on the shore.
He was reaching everyone, regardless of social standing.
Right. Everyone could hear the story. The illustrations were common to all. But understanding the deeper meaning, that depended on something else entirely.
So accessibility in hearing, but not necessarily an immediate understanding for everyone.
Exactly. And that leads us right into the core purpose he himself gave.
Which brings us to that moment where the disciples themselves are confused. I love that the text includes this as Matthew 13, verse 10. They pull him aside privately and ask, why? Why do you speak to them in parables?
Yeah, they didn't get it either initially.
Mm.
And his answer is incredibly direct. He confirms this sort of dual purpose.
Reveal and conceal.
That's it. He says, essentially, to you, my followers, it has been given to know the mysteries, the secrets of the kingdom of heaven.
So for those who were genuinely following him, seeking him, the parables were meant to unlock truth.
Yes, to reveal things previously hidden, things kept secret from the foundation of the world, as Matthew puts it later in that chapter.
What kind of mysteries are we talking about here? What was being revealed?
Well, think about the common expectation of the Messiah back then. People expected a powerful, conquering king who'd overthrow Rome immediately, right? A big, dramatic arrival.
Yeah, a political and military restoration of Israel.
But the parables revealed something radically different. The kingdom would start incredibly small, almost imperceptibly, like a tiny mustard seed.
Smallest of seeds, but grows into a huge plant.
Exactly. Or it would work quietly, unseen from within, like yeast spreading through a whole batch of dough. These were revolutionary ideas about how God's rule was actually breaking into the world.
Okay, so that's the revealing part, opening up these kingdom secrets to his followers. But then there's the other side, the concealing part.
Right. And that's the part that often makes people uncomfortable. He says he speaks in parables to those outside the circle of disciples.
So that seeing they may not see, and hearing they may not understand. That's quoting Mark 4, verses 11 and 12, and Luke 8, verse 10 has something similar. It sounds, well, deliberately obstructive.
It does sound harsh on the surface, like he's intentionally locking people out.
Mm.
But when you look at the context, especially how he connects it to prophecy, it seems less arbitrary.
What's the connection?
He quotes Isaiah chapter 6, verses 9 and 10. That passage describes a situation where people have already hardened their hearts, closed their eyes, and plugged their ears to God's message.
So their rejection came first.
It seems so. Jesus is saying their persistent rejection, their unwillingness to truly see and hear, has led to this state. The parables, in a sense, confirm the spiritual condition that's already there. It acts like a spiritual filter.
A filter? How so?
Well, the same story goes out to everyone in the crowd. For the person with a humble, seeking heart, it sparks curiosity. It makes them want to know more, like the disciples did. It reveals light.
But for someone whose heart is hard, or who's filled with prejudice, or maybe just intellectual pride.
For them, the story remains just a story. Or worse, it might even reinforce their misunderstanding or rejection. The parable itself doesn't change. The listener's heart determines the outcome. It sifts the listeners.
So understanding isn't automatic. It depends on the posture of the listener.
Precisely. And Jesus emphasizes this, fulfills Isaiah's prophecy about people growing dull of heart, lest they should actually see, hear, understand, turn, and be healed. It's a judicial consequence of their prior rejection.
But crucially, the door wasn't completely shut, was it?
No, absolutely not. That's key. Jesus was always willing to explain the parables privately to anyone who honestly asked.
Like the disciples asking about the parable of the sower.
Exactly. They didn't understand. They were confused. But they didn't just walk away. They sought the meaning. They asked. And he explained it fully to them.
So the parables conceal truth mainly from those too lazy to think, as one scholar put it, or too blinded by prejudice to see.
Right. Understanding is presented as a gift, yes, but seeking is clearly the listener's responsibility. You have to want to find the treasure.
Which really highlights that these aren't just quaint stories or clever teaching aids. They're designed to do something in the listener.
Oh, absolutely.
Yeah.
They're meant to be transformative. They often function like a mirror, forcing you to see yourself, and then they issue a call to action demanding a response.
The mirror function. Can you give an example?
The parable of the prodigal son in Luke 15 is maybe the perfect example. Luke explicitly tells us the setup. Jesus is eating with sinners and tax collectors.
And the Pharisees and scribes are grumbling about it, complaining.
Yes, they're offended by his association with the wrong people. So Jesus tells this story about a father and two sons.
We usually focus on the younger son, the prodigal, who leaves and messes up.
We do. But the real target of the parable, given the audience, is almost certainly the old brother.
The one who stayed home, did all the right things, worked hard.
But is completely resentful, angry, and joyless. When the lost brother comes home and the father throws a party, he won't even go inside.
He's the mirror for the Pharisees and scribes.
It's a devastatingly accurate portrait of their attitude. He's showing them, this is you. You claim obedience, but your hearts are far from the Father's heart of grace and celebration. You resent the Father's love for the lost.
It exposes that joyless, judgmental spirit.
Completely. And think about the ending. It's a cliffhanger, isn't it?
Yeah, the father pleads with the older son, come in and celebrate, but we never find out if he actually does.
Exactly. The story ends with a question hanging in the air, directed squarely at the Pharisees and scribes listening. Will you soften your heart? Will you join the celebration of grace? Or will you stay outside nursing your resentment?
Wow. That's powerful. It forces a decision.
It absolutely does. And it highlights another crucial aspect. These truths are spiritually discerned, as Paul says later in 1 Corinthians chapter 2, verse 14. Meaning you can hear the story, understand the plot, maybe even grasp the basic moral like be nice to your brother. But to get the deeper layers, the mysteries of the kingdom, you need more than just human intellect. You need spiritual insight, help from the Holy Spirit.
Without that, you miss the real treasure hidden in the story.
You miss the radical nature of God's grace, the upside-down values of his kingdom, and that leads to the final point. The parables are ultimately a call to commitment, a call to action.
They demand more than just intellectual agreement.
Much more. Think about the parable of the hidden treasure in Matthew 13, verse 44. A man finds treasure buried in a field. What does he do?
He hides it again, goes and sells everything he owns, and buys that field.
Everything. It shows the supreme value of the kingdom. Discovering it, recognizing its worth, demands total commitment, a reordering of all your priorities. It costs you everything, but it's worth infinitely more.
The parables keep asking us, is the kingdom worth that much to you?
That's the challenge they lay down.
So wrapping up part one then, it seems clear Jesus' use of parables was incredibly multifaceted. It was strategic, protective, revealing, concealing,
And ultimately transformative.
Yeah.
They're like spiritual treasure chests, deliberately hidden in the plain sight of a story, waiting for the seeker to discover the riches inside.
And we really are privileged, aren't we? Jesus pointed that out to his disciples, Matthew 13, verse 17, saying, many prophets and righteous people longed to see and hear what they were seeing and hearing.
A profound privilege, which means we should approach these parables with humility, right?
Right.
But also with eagerness, like a treasure hunter who knows there's something valuable to be found.
And remembering that finding the treasure isn't the end goal. Application completes discovery. The real value comes in living out the lessons they teach.
That's the crucial step.
Which leaves us with a final thought for you to consider. If the parables reveal the nature and value of the kingdom, and often point to aspects of Christ and his work, they are fundamentally an invitation.
An invitation not just to understand an idea, but to actually enter that kingdom, to embrace that treasure.
So the question the parables leave us with is, will we recognize the infinite value of what's being offered, like the man who found the treasure? And will we act accordingly?
A challenging question to sit with.
Indeed. Well, if you found this discussion helpful, please do share this study with others. We hope it provides valuable context for understanding these amazing stories.
And next time, we'll dive into the very first parable Jesus explained in Matthew 13.
That's right. Our next study will focus on the sower. We hope you'll join us then.